Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. As you know, the Russians launched another massive missile attack right after the Orthodox Christmas ended. The Russians were using different types of missiles and different directions of attack. When talking about the northern part, the Russians were using the Savitsyevka aircraft field, and from this area the Russians were attacking Ukraine with 4 MiG-31 with Kinzhal missiles. There were 4 MiG-31. Every single Kinzhal was entered and got its target in Ukraine. The second area the Russians were using is Engels airfield to the east of Ukraine. The third area the Russians were using is Caspian region. When talking about the total number of airplanes that were involved, the 16 strategical bomb aircrafts attack Ukraine today, including the aircrafts that were attacking Ukraine with Kinzhals. So according to information we have, there were around 4 waves of attack. Furthermore, it's just the planes that we were talking about. Furthermore, the Russians were attacking Ukraine with ballistic missiles from the city by the name of Jankoy in Crimea. For these purposes, from these directions, the Russians were bombing from Jankoy the city of Zaporozhye that located to the north, and the Russians were bombing the city of Kryvyi Rog, this one. Furthermore, before all these strikes during the previous night, the Russians were bombing and attacking Odessa using Geran drones, trying to suppress and to destroy and discover Ukrainian air defense. We have just video from this area. This is just the explosion, the results of Geran strike. When talking about this night, if you compare this night's strike with the let's say New Year Eve strikes, there are a lot of differences, and the most important difference is that there are almost no geolocations in videos. Probably the Ukrainian population were so scared by the previous attacks, by the previous results, when the Special Service of Ukraine captured significant number of civilians and basically arrested them for nothing, for showing the results of strikes. So today we don't have almost anything. But even though we have a lot of updates, so let's start from the beginning. We have discussed Odessa. The next city is Kryvyi Rog. A lot of explosions took place in this city, and according to information we have, according to the Russian sources, as a result of those strikes, this city Kryvyi Rog was blackout, was without electricity. So probably the Russians managed to got energy facility area in this town. Furthermore, we got one geolocated video. This is the mall somewhere in the central part of this city that Ukrainians were using as a warehouse, the storage for ammo and rounds, and as you can see, that warehouse was destroyed. As we discussed, the explosions took place in Zaporozhye, but we don't have details about them. We have the same situation from Dnipro. We have information about the explosions, but we don't have the, let's say, the video or photo confirmations, or at least the descriptions of objects that were attacked. And we have, of course, the attacks in Kharkiv. When talking about Kharkiv, there were a lot of explosions. The Russians destroyed and attacked the Ukrainian factories, plants, and once again, as the situation on the 1st and the 2nd of January, the Russians were trying to get the military production plants, military facilities, trying to reduce the Ukrainian possibilities. Furthermore, the Russians are saying that they were bombing not just using missiles, but also there was a very heavy artillery duels. The Russians were bombing the Ukrainian positions in Kharkiv, Kupinsk, Shevchenkovo, Burluke, Volchanske. So the Russians were bombing the territory of Ukraine that located somewhere like here. So this might be these bombardments looks like artillery preparation before possible Russian invasion or possible Russian attack. Very unlikely the Russians are going to do this, but maybe they're trying to stress Ukrainians and to force them to keep as many as possible forces exactly on this direction, trying to force them to send some reinforcements from Kupinsk in this area. The Ukrainians reported about ballistic missiles also in direction of Chernigov, but we don't have any results or updates regarding the results of those attacks. Furthermore, lots of missiles entered the western part of Ukraine, but we haven't received any geolocated or any descriptions of targets and the results of those strikes. Probably the Russians were trying to get Ukrainian air defense systems or some productions or military plants. Furthermore, the Ukrainians haven't noted about the strikes in Poltava. Poltava is the area of, it's an airfield area with significant number of Su-24, Su-27s that Ukrainians were using to attack Crimea, and not just Crimea, but the Black Sea region. So this area was also under Russian fire. So as you can see that these attacks that took place today, probably those waves were one of the most biggest waves since the beginning of the special military operation. Obviously, the Russians managed to get the goals. So today we're going to receive probably during the day some updates. Maybe even we're going to receive some geolocations. Now we're moving to the situation on the ground, and first we're going to start with Liman direction. We have some geolocated video. On these scenes, we can see how the Russian armored vehicle Fist was attacking the Ukrainian positions to the west of Chervonopopovka. We don't know the results of that attack, but due to the fact that the Russians have huge advance a little bit to the southwest, probably this area was also penetrated by the Russians and the Ukrainians were forced to step back. So basically, according to this geolocation, currently the Russians are trying to attack along this line. So as we discussed a few videos ago, the main purpose for the Russians at this stage of special military operation on this direction is to shorten the front line, shorten the combat line, and to get as close as possible to Zhiribets using the broad front line attack, using this line, and this will allow the Russians to stretch their forces, not to concentrate them at one point, and to force the Ukrainians to exhaust the Ukrainians more effectively. Now we are moving to Dibrova. We have some videos from the western part of the village. The Russians published and the Ukrainians also published the video from different angles. The results of clashes, how the Ukrainians were trying to send their tanks to attack Dibrova, but that Ukrainian tank was damaged and destroyed with FPV drone strikes. So as we can see, the Russians also currently have some certain focus in this area, and for the previous 2 weeks they were trying to restore control over this territory, and as I understand they will continue doing this. And now we are moving to Bakhmut-Artyomovsk direction. We have a lot of interesting updates. The Russians continue their offensive operation in direction of Popovo Forest, and today we got the video how the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian positions in the cemetery. This is another video confirmation that there is no control, Russian control over this territory. The Russians were bombing just the edge positions, and the most important part of the video is this one. So take a look. The Russian tank or armored vehicle was attacking the Ukrainian positions, and just take a look, put your attention to the angle of Russian attack. So according to this video, the Russians were bombing the Ukrainians somewhere like this, along this line. So the Russian armored vehicle was located somewhere along this line. Probably, very likely, the Russians, as a result of clashes during the previous days, managed to establish control over these fields, and they're currently trying to bypass and half encircle cemetery from the northeast and the southeast. Furthermore, just yesterday we discussed that the Russians were bombing these positions of Ukrainian forces, trying to pin the Ukrainians down and not to allow them to counter-attack. So as I understand now, this is the main battlefield between Russian and Ukrainian army, between Popovo Forest, cemetery, and the Russian stronghold that used to be under Ukrainian control. Once again, this is the area of battle. This is the fields. There is like open air, very difficult to fight. The Russians are trying to attack, and they are trying to bypass this territory, and they are trying to get to half encircle this cemetery and to get Popovo Forest. So we'll follow the situation. For now, the Russians haven't managed to achieve like significant results, but they're pushing, and as you can see, there are no almost resistance from the Ukrainian side. Also, we have some details and updates from the northern part of Klishchiivka. We have geolocated video from the Ukrainian side. The Ukrainian FPV drone operator attacked these 3 lines with FPV drone, which confirms the Russian progress and Russian control over this area. Furthermore, we got some geolocated some mappers have updated their maps as well. So according to all these things, and we have like strong proof of Russian presence and Russian control, we will adjust the map in Russian favor. And once again, we see that the Russians are getting closer and closer to the main Ukrainian stronghold in this area. We are talking about this fortification belt. The Russians need to take control over this. This will allow the Russians to bypass this area, to have a stable foothold, and to continue offensive operation along this 3 line in direction of Ivanovskaya. And now we are moving to Avdiivka direction. We have some updates, some geolocations from this area as well. The Ukrainian sources published the video of FPV drone strikes against the trenches. On this video we can see the trenches along the 3 lines, along the railways that goes from Stepovo to Ocheretina, and there were Ukrainian FPV drones who were bombing the Russians, which controls, that's like 100% the strongest, the strongest proof ever that the Russians do have control over this territory. They're digging in deeper, and probably very soon they will continue developing their positions in many directions. We got some updates from the eastern part of Avdiivka, and another update from the mappers. According to information we have, the Russians continue advancing further to the south along these 3 lines, and for now we don't have any geolocated proofs, but very likely the Russians have some certain plans, and they will continue doing this within the next days and weeks. And as we discussed, the main purpose of the Russians with this attack in the eastern part of Avdiivka is to bypass the main stronghold of the Ukrainian forces in the eastern part and to attack the Ukrainians in their back. So this is the main purpose and plan. We have adjusted and updated the map in Mariinka because we just yesterday discussed that Ukrainians published the video of FPV drone strikes of the Russian forces in this area, so we have 100% proof. And we got the video how the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian ammo depot somewhere on the northern part of Krasnogorovka, and as a result of artillery strike, that system was destroyed. As you can see, the Russians were doing the reconnaissance with very interesting AI technology. The AI was flying above this territory and was tracking the movements and some things that can be recognized as armored vehicles, and of course the data was transferred immediately to the intelligence centers. And after that, the Russians took a decision what to attack, whether there are concentration of forces or not. There are concentration of forces, we know it's Krasnogorovka. And now we are moving to Krynki direction. We have some updates from this area as well, just FPV drone strikes confirming the presence of each forces in each directions. We see the Ukrainians still control the foothold, and the Russians are getting closer and closer to the foothold, but without any attempts to attack. You know that today is, for example, on the streets where I'm living in this CIA region, it's like minus 22 below 0 by Celsius. So the weather in Ukraine is very difficult, and this is another reason why the Russians took a decision to attack today. Furthermore, the Russians were attacking not just military plants, military facilities. At some cities we see blackouts, so the Russians were attacking energy facilities as well. As I understand, the Russians will continue. The first day, the first point we have is the 15th of January, and according to MI6 intelligence, something is going to happen after 15th of January. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.